Hey guys, Zen here, welcome back to the channel. And today I'm going to be sharing with you the top 8 meta decks for Space Time Smackdown, especially with having over a week's worth of tournament data. And real quick, a couple key points that we're going to be discussing here, factors of what makes, in my eyes, a top 8 list for meta decks is going to be a few things. How many winners were piloting a variation of that deck? How many players versus the win rate, as well as the overall deck construction. And like, I've competed in a fair share of tournaments this previous week, so going up against them, seeing what won, seeing what even got the top 16. So taking all of that into consideration, I'm going to be sharing with you what I think the top 8 deck lists are. And like, if you look at this list right here, it says actually Mewtwo Gardevoir is in the 8th spot. However, being piloted with around 470 players and a 41.05% win rate, I don't think that's the case. So for our first, in our 8th spot, if you will, has got to be Magnezone Hitmonlee, which was piloted by Sararu. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that right. They went 10-0 with this deck list. And at first you're like, oh, this seems kind of weird. However, when you realize what decks are in the top 3 spots, you're like, oh, okay, this hard counters them. So that's why you're seeing a emergence of this type of deck, and it's doing so well. So let's talk about this deck real quick. We have 2 Magnemites, 2 Magneton from Genetic Apex. It's very important because it ramps itself. So that way you only need to run a fighting type energy in this deck, and your Magneton ramps itself. Essentially, you play your Magneton, that first turn you ramp, the following turn you ramp again, and then you could evolve, and now you have 2 Thunder Blasts with your Magnezone. This thing is crazy. Easily the best card out of the entire Space-Time Smackdown set. In my opinion, it's like Drud from Mythical Island, where it just needed to go into almost every deck, and it significantly improved that deck. There's 2 Marshadows, 2 Hitmonlees, and 1 Hitmonchan. The idea of this is your Hitmonlee, right? You ramp your Magneton, your Magnezone on the bench. It's going to be your high damage dealer. Your Hitmonlee tags, we're going to use that phrase a lot because of the emergence of Cyrus. Hitmonlee is going to tag their bench, and when you're ready, your Magnezone comes out, Cyrus goes out, brings that tagged Pokemon, and your Magnezone could just knock him out for some easy points. You have 2 research, 2 Pokeballs, 2 X speeds, and 1 communication. All in all, I'm actually very impressed with this type of deck. You're not seeing like the same type of strategy over and over again, but instead what you're seeing is cards that are very impactful in the current meta, and then branching out using other Pokemon from the first set, from the mini set, from this current set, and just blending them all together into this cohesive way of just countering these very top meta decks. So all in all, shout out to Sararu right here for this first place winning deck list. It's pretty impressive. And with that, I do want to also note how many players. There are 3 first place winners overall in this, I guess you could say archetype, in this variation of decks that ran a sort of Magnezone Hitmonlee deck type. Now let's move on to the next one. This is probably the second most highest winning player group. There are 6 winners across all tournaments, first place winners that played a variation of Darkrai Greninja. However, the one we're going to be looking at is Hokolius. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that right. And it just makes sense. This deck is so good. And I really like this deck because it goes to show you, again, exactly what I was talking about, taking the first set, the mini set, and the brand new set, and blending them all together to make a very strong deck. Like, the game is only 20 cards, but the deck building goes hard at this. Like, just being able to creatively put all these very strong Pokemon with abilities together and make them work is just amazing. You have your Greninja, which acts as your sniper to aka tag the bench. You have your 2 Cyrus, because again, that's what we were talking about, to bring them in. And then potentially your Darkrai just shreds them. Now, Darkrai in this deck, you're only running Darkness energy. And the reason is because every time you apply that energy onto your Darkrai, even if they're on your bench, you deal 20 damage to the opposing active Pokemon. That damage builds up, especially if you have something like Drud as your frontliner. They're afraid to attack you because if they do, they're taking 20, and then they're guaranteed to take another 20 on your turn if you just ramp your Darkrai. And then when you're ready, you can just pull back with your Leaf, go into Darkrai, and just start dishing out damage. All the while waiting to bring out that 1 tagged Pokemon that's going to be 1 tapped by your Darkrai with Cyrus because of your Greninja. It's a pretty strong deck. So 2 Druds, 2 Cyrus, 2 Research, 1 Leaf, 2 Pokeballs, 2 Pokemon Communications, because getting the Greninja is pretty important in this, and then 1 Potion just for sustainability. All in all, a very strong deck, and shout out to Poculus, again, hopefully I'm pronouncing that right, for getting this into a first winning place deck list. Again, there are 6 first place winning deck lists with this type. And I think the overall player base is around 550 players enter tournaments with this type of deck variation. And there is a 57% win rate so far as of me covering this. I also just realized I didn't go over the win rate percentage of this one at 55%. The win rate percentage doesn't really matter as much because there are just so many people playing it. What I'm really looking at is how many of those people get first place, and how strong are those decks, how similar, how contrast are they. So 55% win rate for this one. The Darkrai Greninja is a 57% win rate so far. And now we're going to go into Darkrai Weavile, which is personally one of my favorites. This one has 4 first place winners, and we're looking at Yaguru today that went 12-2 in the Frog EX Space-Time Smackdown. Here's their deck. We have 2 Sneasel, 2 Weavile, 2 Darkrai EXs, and 2 Spiritombs. Now, we already know what the Darkrai EX does. However, with Weavile, it synergizes really well. One of my preferred ways of playing this is you have your Darkrai on bench, you've just evolved your Weavile, right? Even if you're going first and you can attack, you evolve into your Weavile, you give your Darkness Energy to your Darkrai on bench, it deals that 20 damage, you use Dawn, which is in this deck, to then take that energy to put it on Weavile, and now your Weavile can do the extra damage from scratching nails, which is really cool because the opposing Pokemon has damage on them, so you get an additional, essentially you're doing 90 damage, potentially 110 if they have a weakness to you on turn 2, which is kind of nuts. Spiritomb also really synergizes with Cyrus. If you lead with that, you tag all their Pokemon, and then pretty much whenever you want, as long as they don't have a Shaman or any means of healing, you can use your double Cyrus to pull certain Pokemon in and knock them out with either Weavile or Darkrai EX. You have Professor Research, 2 Leafs, 2 Cyrus, like we said, 1 Dawn. Typically, sometimes I run 2. But 1 Dawn's fine. Pokeballs, 2 Pokeballs, 1 Pokemon Communication, and then 2 Rocky Helmets. Now, you're probably wondering, why the Rocky Helmets? Well, again, this synergizes so well with Sneasel and Weavile. If you're leading Sneasel and you don't have that Darkrai strategy to tag them, you give it a Rocky Helmet. If your opponent attacks you, they take damage. Guess what? The following turn, Weavile comes in and just shreds them. It works so good. It effectively does 90 damage guaranteed turn 2 if your opponent is attacking you and you're going first. Rocky Helmet Sneasel is such a strong opener if you're going first. So very cool deck. Very congratulations on Yaguro for getting first place here. Around 650 players took a variation of this deck into tournaments with only about 52% win rate overall through their matches. Next up, let's go to one of my personal favorites. All right, so this is Exeggutor Celebi. 3 first place winners. This player, Glion, went 13-1 with this deck list. And the reason I'm covering this one is because there's no Superior, which is pretty amazing. Typically, you would expect a Superior. I'm a Superior like enthusiast. However, they're not running a Superior, so let's see how they were able to just dominate. Well, first of all, I think we need to talk about the elephant in the room, and this being a grass type deck, and with Darkrai Weavile and Darkrai pretty much every deck, they're weak to grass. So having a grass deck just makes sense. We have 2 Exeggutors, 2 Exeggutor, 1 Celebi, 2 Professor Research, 2 Erica, 2 Sabrina, 1 Cyrus, 2 Pokeballs, 2 Potions, 1 Communication, 2 Rocky Helmets, and 1 Giant Cape. Overall, this feels like almost like an Articuno 18 trainers. Of course, it's not 18 trainers, but there's a lot of support here. And the idea is you lead into your Execute, evolve into your Exeggutor, you have a thick boy, throw in a cape, it's 180, you got some potions, Ericas, that thing stays alive at front lines, and it deals damage up to 80 or as little as 40 every single turn for 1 energy. And then what you do is you build up your Celebi on the bench. Typically what else I would do is put the other Execute on the bench so that way you can counter things like Sabrina. But yeah, you just build your Celebi, and by the time, if you end up losing your Exeggutor EX, guess what? Celebi comes in and just shreds them, as long as you're hitting heads. And it looks like that's the exact idea of this deck. You have sustainability with Erica, You have the disruption with Sabrina. You have Cyrus too. If they try to pull something back, you're like, no, just kidding. Come back. Let me finish that off. And then also Rocky Helmet could be applied to deal even more damage, turning Exeggutor EX's 40 damage output to potentially 60 or even 100, which is pretty good. I wish I thought of this or ran a similar set last week. I tried to run the Celebi updated with communications, power I ran superior, but seeing this type of deck list makes me very, very, very happy. This has around 680 plus players taking a variation of this deck, me being one of them. However, it could also include superior, with only 3 first place winners and overall about a 52% win rate across all matches. So again, shout out to you, Gleon, for running this deck. It was superb. With that, let us go into the next one, which is going to be Gyarados Greninja. Who would have thought? Listen, I would have been the first one to be like, yeah, this is done. This is out of here. But they're still doing good. They're still doing great. And honestly, I don't think there's any new cards other than maybe 1 or 2 cards. So let's check it out real quick. This one was piloted by Whir. They went 14-1, and I think they got 1 tie. You're looking at the deck list. This is exactly what you would see as one of the first place or second place deck lists for Mythical Island. However, the only new card here is Cyrus. And Cyrus, it just goes to show you how impactful that card can be. The idea is you ramp your Gyarados EX on the bench, right? Get them online. His thing shreds for 140. Darkrai's, Weaviles, a lot of they're all done if they don't have capes. They're gone. They're kaput, right? And then you have your 2 Druds as your frontliners. Greninja's there to snipe. If you snipe the right one, you Cyrus them, and that's pretty much GG, right? It's a pretty strong strategy. However, because of that, and I'm assuming because a lot of players already had the cards in their arsenal, we're having a larger player group, a player base playing this type of variation, being around like over 800 players. However, this is the kicker, less than 50% win rate. Now, it could just be because everyone's getting Tails Misty. It could be because the other cards are way too strong. It could be because Magnezone kind of shuts this down in 2 turns. It could be all the Hitmonlees saying, hey, sorry, Magikarp, you're not doing anything. There are so many reasons, right? But with that being said, there are still 4 first place winners during this past week that ran a variation of Gyarados Greninja. So shout out to you guys, specifically you were for running this first place winning deck list. And with that, we're going into the top 3, you guys. I hope you're excited, because I am. I am very excited, especially to show you guys first place, which I'm pretty sure you already know what first place is going to be. But first, let's talk about the 3rd place. This is a Palkia Vaporeon deck, which I honestly might run this week. I just pulled the Crown Rare. I'm like, you know what? Why not flex and play this deck? But Magnezone kind of checks it, so we'll see. This one was piloted by Kana41, and there were 3 first place winners with around 800, again, like over 800, almost 900 players bringing a variation of this with a 52% win rate. We're going to look at the deck list here, and it's exactly what you would have thought. We have 2 EVs. Typically, I would probably run the Step EV just because the scaling and the damage output is tremendous. This guarantees 20, but like with the Step EV, it's unlimited damage if you get lucky, right? Vaporeon's here because that is our prime card to help us get the strategy off of dishing out tremendous damage. Manaphy's important too, and then Palkia. So here's the idea. You go second, okay? You bench your Eevee, you bench your Palkia, and you active spot your Manaphy. You attach an energy, and you ramp your Palkia and your Eevee. That's turn 1. Turn 2, you use Leaf, you retreat your Manaphy, you bring out your Palkia, you evolve your Eevee into Vaporeon, and now you wash out all 3 of those energies back to Palkia, and you still have that 1 energy from Energy Zone. You attach it to Palkia, and now turn 2, you're dishing out 150 and knocking out pretty much, 80-90% of Pokemon in the entire game of Pokemon Pocket. And on top of that, if they have any bench Pokemon, you tag them, where you can use your Cyrus the following turn if you need to. There's also 2 Misties. If that strategy doesn't go the exact way that you were hoping for, just get lucky off Misties. Like, the damage output and the ramp and the potential of this deck is just astonishing. The only real way you lose is a few ways. You brick by not drawing the cards you need, which is very doable in the game of Pokemon Pocket. However, in a best of 3, it's like kind of hard to brick that many times, right? It takes the archetype of Misty and coin flips and gives it a little bit more consistency, especially with Manaphy being able to ramp 2 cards. And then Vaporeon effectively saying, we can move that energy. Don't you worry about it, pal. So it's pretty good. It's pretty strong. 2 Misties, 2 Leaves, 2 Professor Research, 2 Cyrus, 2 Pokeballs, and 2 Giant Capes. to then raise either our Manaphy or even our Palkia to up to 170 HP. All in all, pretty strong deck. I'm a fan of this Palkia variation. This one went 8-1 with 1 tie. Shout out to Yukana41 for piloting this amazing deck. Now we're going to go into one of the strongest decks from Genetic Apex, and it's going to be the Charizard EX, piloted by Mana, who went 10-2, and it's literally the exact same deck list you would see in set 1. However, we got a huge buff with every single stage 2 Pokemon, specifically the starters, with Pokemon communication. It's pretty like strategic though. I do need to point that out. If you're running Pokemon communication and you're using it specifically to find a Charmeleon, I don't think it's necessarily needed for the Charizard. However, you can use it for the Charizard. But the idea that I'm talking about here is if you're looking for a Charmeleon, you would need to lead Moltres and bench only 1 Charmander, even if you have another Charmander in your hand. Because if you don't draw another Pokemon, there are only, what is it, a total of 8 Pokemon cards in your deck of 20, less than 50%, right? So not having a Pokemon card in your hand could hurt you if you put 2 Charmanders down on bench, speaking from personal experience. So being able to methodically and strategically be like, oh, when do I use my Pokemon communication? So that way I can pull that card. Like if your Charmander is not evolving that turn, wait the next turn, draw from your deck and see if it's another Pokemon card, right? Pokeballs can help you draw another basic. So you can either draw that other Moltres and then use that for Pokemon communication to find your Charmeleon, to find your Charizard. But all in all, pretty strong deck. I've even seen some variations with Shaman that add a little bit more sustainability, but I really like this. It's taken Charizard, it's making it a lot stronger. People aren't running Mew, which was a very common check in Mythical Island expansion. Those tournaments, like Mew was being run in every deck, so Charizard EX kind of fell off. However, not a lot of people are playing Mew now, which is surprising, which means Charizard EX is emerging like a phoenix from the ashes. You have 2 Charmanders, Charmeleons, 2 Charizards, 2 Moltres, 2 Research, 1 Leaf, 2 Pokeballs, 2 X Speeds, 2 Potions, 2 Communications, and 1 Giant Cape. All in all, a very strong deck, and I love seeing older decks get these buffs and then start coming back on top. Like again, Genetic Apex, it was amazing. Mythical Island, it kind of fell out because of Mew, and then now you're looking at it, it's coming right back up. It's pretty impressive. With that, there are 3 first place winners. Over 900 players are playing a variation of Charizard, which goes to show you a lot of people are trying to bring it back, which is cool. We weren't getting those numbers previously, and it's sitting around a 50% win rate across all matches, which brings us to the first place winning deck list. And let's not be surprised, it is Darkrai and Magnezone. This thing is crazy. Let me just throw some quick stats for you guys. This deck is piloted by Hitmonlee. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that right. So, but previously, Darkrai Greninja was the only deck that had 6 first place winners. How many do you think this has? Yeah, okay, I'll wait. 9. 9 first place winners, but that's not even it. Over 1,000 players are playing a variation of this deck list, but that's not even it, guys. 57% win rate. Almost 60. Almost to have that many players pilot this type of deck and to have that high of a win rate for matches and that many first place winners, I think we can like end the argument here. Darkrai Magnezone, best deck in the format, no questions. I mean, I don't like it. I wish there was a little bit like a closer second place, third place. But it is what it is, guys. And shout out to you, Hitmonlee. In fact, actually, can I show you guys? Let's go to the standings here. I'm covering it up, but this is for the Hooglandia and Spraggles Open. The top 8, 7, you guys. 7 out of the top 8 was, well, 6 actually. This is the person brought a wheezing. 6 was Magnezone Darkrai. But yeah, with that, let's go over this first place winning deck list. We can break it down for you guys. This one's interesting because they ran a Kangaskhan, okay? Typically, you'll see 2 Druds instead. However, this is going to show you that, Kangaskhan might actually be good, might actually help. I won't tell you that. I would say run 2 Druds. You have 2 Magnetons, 2 Magnemite, 2 Magnezone, 2 Darkrai. We already talked about what that does. And essentially what makes a deck very strong in Pokemon Pocket, I've seen it for every single set release so far, every season, every tournament, it looks to be like abilities. Abilities, the more strong abilities your cards have, the better advantage your deck will have. Now, it isn't the case across the board, but again, 9 first place winners. Magnezone has a great ramp ability. Darkrai has a great damaging ability, and then Droid has a great frontlining ability. Like, just the abilities of these cards are tremendous. We have 2 Leafs, 2 Research, 1 Cyrus, 1 Dawn, 1 Giovanni, 1 Giant Cape, and 2 Pokeballs. This is kind of an all-around deck list. It's a little all over the place, but typically what I would see is 2 Druds, maybe even no Giovanni, and 2 Cyrus. However, the inclusion of Giovanni does make sense. It's a very strong archetype. The fact is, as long as you run Darkrai EX Magnezone variation and build the deck around that, it's probably one of the strongest decks in the entire format. But there you guys have it. Let me know in the comments what you think of these top 8. Are any of them your favorite? Or any of them decks that you're going to try out, climb the ladder either competitively on Limitless TCG, or even just, casually? Let me know. Are there any other decks that you would hope to see in the top 8 in the future that are, kind of being slept on right now? You never know. This is literally just the first week and a half-ish of tournaments with the set 2 release. So with that, don't forget to like the video, consider subscribing for more quality Pokemon Pocket content so you don't miss out on information like this, high quality decks, and pretty much anything premier about Pokemon Pocket. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'm Zen, and I will catch you guys in the next one. Later.